Then to Campos in southern Spain. The DD2 karts firing up their engines, ready for the start of the first big final of the European and international racing season. It's a 15-lap race, and there you can see on pole position Sean Babington to the left of your picture. Kart 602, the British driver, having switched teams from Dan Holland to Strawberry Racing, leads them away. Alongside him, 605, Zendarua is the Belgian driver who's moved across to the ART Grand Prix team. So both of the front row drivers have moved to different teams this year, but they've hit the ground running, and both of them having a fantastic weekend thus far. On road 2 then we got Oriol Damo Caballero, the Spanish driver, and Anthony Abbas from France. On road 3, Mikael Christensen from Denmark and Henry Easthope from the UK. On row 4, Andres Batman from Sweden. Alex Beji starts 8th, he comes from Italy. And then completing the top 10 there, Harold Katlis, the Latvian, and Florent Lambert, the French driver who's been based many years in Great Britain. He is the top Masters driver, the top over 32 driver, has qualified in 10th place, but feels that potentially he could go forwards a little bit more based on what he told us before the race. Felt that he wasn't quite there in the pre-final, and there's a bit more to come.
Chris, can I just interrupt you? Sean Babington having an issue on the formation lap and going off the circuit. He's about 8th at the moment of that running list, but he's going to have to get himself up to pole position. More's the point. Hopefully nothing was amiss in him leaving the tarmac just then. Yeah, well, they got 2 out laps, so he's got time to get back in position. He didn't drop right to the back of the pack, so he'll be allowed to get back into his position. Maybe just a quick look around the circuit then on this second formation lap. That's the run into turn 1. It's a tight turn. If you're on the outside, drivers get worried about it, because if you have incidents on the inside, karts come together, they come across to the outside, and you can get put in the gravel. This first section then here, and the runs from turns 2 up to this corner right in front of your shot, that's turn 7. That's generally an uphill section, so it's quite an undulating track this, so they rise up through there, then back downhill through this right-hander you can see, that's turn 8, and then it's a sharp drop down into the left-hander, almost a hairpin really at turn 9, and then the middle sector of the lap. Here's this straight. This runs opposite the start-finish straight into this hairpin, this left-hand hairpin where we've seen lots of overtaking at turn 10. If you get that wrong, somebody is likely to dive up the inside of you into that right-hander there. That's turn 11. That's a big sweeping arced bend which rises up to the apex, and then the track begins to fall down. So it's a descent down then, the back straight, this flat out kink which you can see here down towards the hairpin at turn 12. So it looks pretty flat from that picture, but it's quite a run downhill there, so they carry a lot of speed, and we've seen some overtaking then on the brakes into the next corner that you're about to see, turn 12, this hairpin. But again, you've got to make sure that if you brake hard, you don't go too deep into the corner, because the next turn, turn 13, is a left-hander, and you've got to get across and shut the door before that. So through turn 13, the left-hander, and then turn 14, the right-hander, leads them back onto the start-finish straight. We're almost ready to go. Here's Ken to talk you through the start of DD2 final. Yes, indeed. Chris and I have said all we might have wanted to pontificate about. The drivers have gone through their routines. There's somebody towards the back who's not under power, and the hands go up. This will not be a start. This is an aborted start. We are not away. I think the driver who was in difficulty was Lorenzo Van Riet. He should be starting on the inside of row 6. He was the last of the 30, and it may well have been that a kindly decision was made that the guy who'd qualified for a 6th row start should be permitted to gain his rightful position. Did actually lose power, and I thought the kart was maybe going to splutter to a halt, but he has got it to play ball again.
And looking at Sean Babington, kart looks to be absolutely fine now. It's a bit of a heart-in-mouth moment, but now he takes his place back at the front of the pack, and on the run down into this hairpin, there he is, Sean back at the front. We'll start to slow down the pace now and bunch them all back together. It's a long, long lap this, one of the longest laps. I think this and Zuera, the 2 longest circuits that we visit during the course of the European campaign. Both of them, of course, in Spain. And we'll bookend the season with visits to Spain because, as well as being part of the Euro Challenge, we'll be back to Zuera in October for the International Open as the season finale. So we'll be coming over to these parts of the world a few times this year. But it's a very popular track with the drivers, and it being a long lap with a good mix of corners, there are and should be plenty of opportunities for the drivers to overtake, Ken.
So Sean Babington and Senderua then, just with 2 turns to go to see this home straight in what they hope that this time will be the home straight, yielding a start to a 15-lap race. Very easy to differentiate, the red and white colours on the right, Senderua, the green and white Tony Kart suit, to the left, Sean Babington. And we are racing this time. Sean Babington looks over his shoulder and Senderua elects not to battle for the lead. Senderua is simply taking the safe route. Oh, and there's contact, and Senderua is one of the people who's been touched and drops out of the top 10.
I think Anthony Abbas is the other one. I think it was behind him going into the corner.
It does look like the Sodikart colours, doesn't it? So 2 very, very strongly fancied drivers in trouble early on. Thanks for that, Chris. But Sean Babington shot into a mammoth lead at the start of the pre-final. It's not quite so big this time, but it's still pretty hefty. Oriol Dalmau Caballero in second place, coming under pressure from... It was Henry Easthope, because that's Anthony Abbas
it was the
going
other
through.
Kart man. Abbas is still there in third. It was Easthope who was right behind them. He's been pushed back to the middle of the pack, Ken.
Yes, and Anthony Abbas immediately putting pressure on Caballero and making the first move of the race. And it is Anthony Abbas, the Frenchman driving for Sodikart, who goes up into second place as we come round to the end of lap 1. Sean Babington leading, Anthony Abbas second, Oriol Dalmau Caballero third.
Yeah, Babington's lead 1.1 seconds. As he comes through from Anthony Abbas in second place. Oriol Dalmau Caballero, the Spanish driver, who seems to have been in the top 3 for the entire weekend. He's there in third place. Michael Christensen in fourth position, so he's made up a spot as well. Andreas Batman and then Alex Baggi right behind him, the Italian. Down the hill they come then, through the right-hander at turn 8. Sean Babington looking like he's on the edge, but always completely under control. Lots of speed carried down into the left-hander at turn 9, running over the curbs, but no problems for Sean Babington. Then it's on the brakes into this left-hand hairpin. You can see he's got about a 5 or 6 kart length lead already over Anthony Abbas. Oriol Dalmau Caballero is right behind him though. Michael Christensen and Andreas Batman are nose to tail as they come onto the back straight. Alex Baggi is about 4 or 5 kart lengths behind them. The old Concertina up under braking on the way into the hairpin, but nobody makes a move on anybody else. It's a long race, 15 laps, so they've got time to make their moves, but they can now go for it on the way through turn 13. They run side by side, Batman and Christensen, but Christensen holds the position. Batman's going to have another go at him, I think, on the way into turn 1. No, not quite close enough. So Michael Christensen hanging on to 4th place, but Andres Batman was all over him at the end of the lap. He couldn't quite find a way through, and that means now that Alex Baggi is right on their tail with that luminous yellow helmet. The Italian is joining the party.
Very much so, very much so. There's only a couple of lengths behind himself and the tail end. And Chris, I'd like you to just have a peep. Sean Babington's time, when I sort of half glance, looks to be stunningly quicker than anybody else on that opening lap.
Yeah, 65.395. The only one of the 65s. He was 7/10 quicker than anybody.
7/10 quicker than everybody else, starting on pole position and having a lead as we look out of the window of a good 8 kart lengths, maybe call that 10 kart lengths. It's all going well so far for Sean. However, there are 13 laps remaining, including the one that they're presently on, so it's a long race, and Anthony Abbas just getting a shade closer. Chris?
Anthony Abbas was a 10th quicker in sector 1, 2/10 quicker in sector 2, and slightly slower in sector 3, so overall about 1.5 tenths quicker on that lap was Anthony Abbas, the French driver. So Sean was getting away while they were all sorting themselves out behind, but now that they've settled into a rhythm, Anthony Abbas is slightly quicker and he's bringing the pack with him.
I was just going to say the same thing, and that makes Caballero a shade quicker too, doesn't it? Because he's not left him for dead, he's only left him for 1.25 kart lengths, 2 lengths at the most.
Well, as long as they feel they're not being held up by Anthony Abbas, which they're certainly not at the moment, they won't try anything silly. They'll just try and hang on to him and allow him. These are very experienced drivers, don't forget. They're not going to do anything silly yet. They'll allow him to take them up to the battle. So very, very shortly, I reckon we're going to have 6 for the lead here. Some good moves a bit further back down into the hairpin. Maxi Fleischmann on Martin Pierce to go 14th. So Maxi Fleischmann with a good move on the former World Masters champion and British champion. Meanwhile, the race leader comes out through turn 13 and back onto the start-finish straight. There's Sean Babington, there's Anthony Abbas closing the gap, and there's a bit of action just behind us. 2 drivers go side by side, and a change for 4th place there on the way into the first turn. And that's Andres Batman is making a move and getting a place back. Alex Baggi is still at the back of the group. So Babington, Abbas and Christensen, the top 3. Andreas Bachmann and Oriol Damo Caballero were trading places there for 4th and 5th on the way into turn 1.
And Chris, at the back end of the top 10, Guillaume Berthaud in front of Florent Lambert, 1 and 2 in the Masters. So the French native and the French-born Brit, 1 and 2 at present. Guillaume Berthaud, kart 6.35, Florent Lambert, kart 6.46.
Seen this a few times, haven't we, from Oriol Damo Caballero? He's right up there for the first couple of laps, but then just seems to slip back a little bit in the middle part of the race. But now he's under attack from Alex Begy, in fact, who goes down the inside of him into the hairpin, and Begy goes through to pick up 5th place. So Damo Caballero has slipped to the tail of that group now in 6th position. Babington comes out of the last corner, flies over the start-finish line. What's the gap like? It was 0.4 seconds. It is just over 0.5 seconds now then, so just a few hundredths quick up. Less than half a tenth quick up was the race leader, Sean Babington. But that gap's about stable, isn't it? Anthony Abbas, Michael Christensen still tied together, and then a slight gap back to Andreas Bachmann in the 6.11 car. Begy, as I said, up to 5th. Damo Caballero, Garcaklis, Schirmer and Van Riet are next up. And then in 10th place, Guillaume Berthaud has got ahead of Florent Lambert to lead the Masters class now.
Yes, he made that move on Flo a couple of laps or so ago, or a lap and a half ago, but they're still tight. Here they are coming along, and a glance over his shoulder by Guillaume Berthaud.
Florent's just lost another couple of places. In fact, Zenderua's passed him, so Zen's up to 11th place now, fighting his way back up the order.
And poised to go into the top 10 again, Chris. There he goes.
Yeah, easy drive for Zen, so he picks up another move on Berthaud, that is, isn't it? So Zenderua back into the top 10. Podium might just about still be on the cards. I'm not sure about a win. He's certainly getting the top 6, couldn't he?
Well, it's a heck of a drive to get into the top half dozen, but he's on course. We've still got 9 to go in this 15-lap DD2 final, so he's not hung about.
We lost Damo Caballero over there at the hill, up at turn 8. Damo Caballero, who started on the second row of the grid. The Spanish driver Caballero is out of the race.
What an unfortunate end to a thoroughly consistent weekend's driving and racing by the Spaniard.
A shame. So now it's Babington. Second, still Abbas. Third, and catching him up slightly, I think, is Michael Christensen. Yeah, Abbas and Christensen, second and third, have just done their personal best lap times. And they're matching the pace now of Sean Babington. Andreas Bachmann is 4th, Alex Begy is 5th. Up to 6th comes Harold Garcaklis. Up to 7th comes Marcel Schirmer. Lorenzo Van Riet's up to 8th. Zenderua's up to 9th now. And Guillaume Berthaud is the only master in the top 10 in 10th place. Through they come, 8 laps to go.
Well, there's plenty to still race for, not least in the Masters category, although Flo Lambert just detaching a little bit from Guillaume Berthaud. But Sean Babington's advantage on the chart is 0.7 of a second. But the evidence of our eyes sometimes suggests that that was a diminishing lead, although having said that, it's the biggest part of a dozen kart lengths. And Anthony Abbas himself with some defensive work to do against the Dane Michael Christensen. Christensen not in a position to make a challenge here at the moment, but a tad later on the break going into turn 7, but not trying to make a pass. And of course in 4th place, the impressive drive from Andreas Bachmann. I think we use the expression flattered to deceive. Well, he unflattered to deceive in the pre-final. Andreas Bachmann is as good as anybody in this front-running four.
He's very quick. He's going for 3rd place into turn 13. Down the inside he goes, and he makes a move on Michael Christensen, who up until that point had been looking like he was going to be the one pushing for 2nd place. So Christensen on the back foot at the moment. Andreas Bachmann with a bit between his teeth, and a good move that into the penultimate corner of that lap for the Swedish driver to go up to 3rd place. Climbing up now to turn 4. Sean Babington is keeping this gap at between half a second and a second. By and large, Anthony Abbas is on exactly the same pace as him, but can't close the gap. So Babington leading by about 5 kart lengths now from the Frenchman. 3rd then, we've got Andreas Bachmann. 4th, we've got Michael Christensen. And then there's quite a big gap back to Alex Begy in 5th place, with Garcaklis next up in 6th position. Andreas Bachmann, by the way, has got the fastest sector times in sectors 2 and 3 now. So it's a great lap for him to get through, and that's what propelled him into the top 3. So he's in a podium paying position as the leader makes his way through that kink and down into the hairpin. Through he goes. There you can see the top 4 together. A bit of a slide there from Andreas Bachmann as he locked up under braking, but he controlled it beautifully, and he's still on track as they come through to start the next lap. 6 laps to go in this race. Babington leading by just over a second now.
Guillaume Berthaud is 10th overall, but leading the Masters. Florent Lambert is 12th overall for second in the Masters. And Martin Pearce, the hitherto luckless Martin Pearce, third in the Masters. And Flo Lombard has gone past, Josh Collins has gone past Guillaume Berthaud. The significance now is that Berthaud and Lambert are 11th and 12th on track. So that's the race for the lead in Masters, 11th and 12th.
I love this section of the course where they run down the hill into the left-hander at turn 9. It's really looks impressive, the braking power of these cars as they fly down, and then you think they're never going to make the corner, and the brakes come on, they shift down the gear, and they somehow make it through the turn in time. Florent Lambert about to lose a place into the left-hand hairpin at turn number 10, and that's Maxi Fleischmann coming through. Maxi makes the move stick, so Maxi up to 12th place with that one. Florent still slightly distant second in his class now. Race leaders coming through. Personal best lap time for Sean Babington. That's his best lap of the race, 63.714. That might even be the best lap of the entire weekend for Sean Babington. So now, suddenly, he's got some breathing space. 1.3 seconds clear. And I think probably, Ken, it's starting to look like the battle for second is the one we're going to have to focus on. I
was just going to say to you, Anthony Abbas has long since lost his prime focus of chasing Sean Babington and defending this very definite battle behind him. Andreas Bachmann, who disposed of the not unimpressive Michael Christensen, has now got Anthony Abbas not within a challenge distance, but certainly within sight. And you use the expression, he's got the bit between his teeth, and Anthony Abbas may be just fading a little bit in the challenge for the lead from Sean Babington. Looking again at the differential, 1.3 seconds, that really is a lot, isn't it? Harold Skokaklis running in 6th place after the disaster in qualifying, and a quick mention for Sasha Pio Haida, starting last but got himself a place, he's fallen away a little, is in 18th place. He was higher than that, so Sasha Pio Haida at least extricating himself from the depths of the last row start.
So personal best lap time for Babington last time around, give him that advantage. But the fastest lap of the race belongs to Michael Christensen. A few laps ago he did a 63.4 looking at the screens. Christensen's faded away a little bit the last couple of laps, but at the moment he holds the fastest lap of the race. And watch for Zenderua, he's in 9th place. He's got a bit of a gap to close, but he's about 0.4 of a second quicker than the next group ahead. So Zen is trying to get himself in the top 6 here. His next target is the turquoise outfitted Lorenzo Van Riet. Just ahead of him, there's side-by-side action between Harold Skarkaklis and Marcel Schirmer, with Schirmer getting through, and Riet gets through as well. So 2 places lost there through the hairpin section for Harold Skarkaklis, and now Harold's is in 8th place, and Zenderua is the one going after him. I think Zen's got these 3 in his sights almost now. Top 6 is definitely on the cards.
Well, Sean Babington's advantage increased, as Chris said, to 1.4 seconds. But Andreas Bachmann didn't get any closer in the last lap and a half to Anthony Abbas. And as things stand with 2 3/4 laps remaining, Anthony Abbas relatively safe in 2nd place. At what point in the race does he say, look, I'm racing for a 2nd place because I can't catch that absolute sprinting leader, Sean Babington? And Andreas Bachmann just in front of cart number 638, Michael Christensen, and Michael Christensen possibly, Chris, thinking, hey, I may be able to get myself back on the podium, because he hasn't been dropped by Andreas Bachmann.
Absolutely not. It's a cracking battle now developing for 6th place as well, coming through turn 11 and about to run down towards that hairpin. And right on the back of that queue is Zenderua. His next target is to get past Skarkaklis. First time of asking, he throws it down the inside from 3 cart lengths back. Brilliant braking manoeuvre there from the Belgian, and he picks up 8th place. His next target, Lorenzo Van Riet, and then if he can get ahead of the next driver, which is Marcel Schirmer, he'll be in the top 6, but it's looking very unlikely, I'm afraid, that he's going to get his hat-trick of victories here in the Winter Cup. You're absolutely right, though. There are 3 places available on the podium, and there are 4 drivers, and one of them's going to miss out, and one of them is going to miss out by not very much by the looks of things, because 2nd, 3rd and 4th are all together. Christensen just not quite close enough to attack into the corners. He just needs to gain another kart length or so, and then he'll be able to pick up the toe down some of the straights. But there's less than 2 laps to go now, and it's going to be pretty tense for those 3 drivers involved in that battle for second.
Well, Anthony Abbas just looking over his left shoulder moments ago. It wasn't a look of alarm. He now dips his head against the wind resistance. And a little bit later on the break was Michael Christensen. But having said that, Andreas Bachmann is a lot closer to Anthony Abbas than he was. So as Sean Babington sets off on the next lap, the 15th and final lap, with all due respect to Sean, let's keep our attention now on this battle for Andreas Bachmann chasing Anthony Abbas for the second place on the podium.
And I don't think Andreas wants to finish third. He's going for that second place, but he's got to be ever so careful, Ken, because Michael Christensen is there. And if Andreas tries the move and it doesn't pull off and it bogs him down in the corners and he can't get back on the accelerator quickly enough, Michael, the Dane, is going to charge past Andreas, the Swede. So Anthony Abbas at the lead of this battle for second place. So Ken, yesterday he wasn't really one that shone out as being somebody likely to be on the podium, although he's always been very quick. But today he's had an absolute stormer. But Andreas Bachmann, Ken, going on the attack as they run down towards turn 12 for the final time.
And the pressure is on now. The Swede taking on the Frenchman, but the wily Frenchman using the full width of the circuit, and there isn't a route through for Andreas Bachmann. But we've got to do justice to the race winner, because the winner of the Winter Cup is Sean Babington by a huge margin. Holding on to second place was Anthony Abbas from the fast finishing Andreas Bachmann. Michael Christensen coming home fourth. Alex Beggi fifth. Marcel Schimmer was sixth. Zenderua, after that disaster at the start, built his way back to seventh. Lorenzo van Riet eighth. Harold Skokaklis, who was running sixth, drops to ninth, and it's a top 10 finish for Josh Collins. And in the Masters category, after Flo Lambert has dominated all weekend, Guillaume Beteau from Karting Sologne in Salbris is in 11th place overall and wins the Masters class. Maxi Fleischmann from the back of the grid, as Chris Hartley and myself suggested might be the case, has come well forward into 12th. Florent Lambert 13th and second in the Masters, and Martin Pierce 14th and third in the Masters. Completing the top 15, Rui Carneiro having one of his better drives of the weekend. But let's sing all the praises of Sean Babington, won by 2.23 of a second, and really and truly, from the heats yesterday in all weathers, the pre-final this morning and the final this afternoon, nobody's got within shouting distance of Sean Babington in this morning's pre-final, nor here. Well, superb effort, and in praising Sean, let's praise Tom Fawcett. Tom, very, very modest lad is Tom Fawcett. He spoke to me, I think it was yesterday, and I hadn't realised then that he'd been assigned by Strawberry Racing to Sean. And Tom was very modest when I asked, how's your lad getting on? Who are you looking after? And he said, well, actually, I'm looking after Sean, and he hadn't done too bad. Well, he hadn't done too bad. And Tom, he hasn't done too bad now. 5 starts, 5 victories, the winner of the Winter Cup. So Sean Babington making some amends from the heartache of having lost the championship last year in the Rotax Euro Challenge by about just 1 point. It was indeed 1 point. Anthony Abbas, a good drive by the Sodi Kart driver into second place without him ever being able to put a challenge on Babington. Andreas Bachmann, the fast finishing Swede, well worth his third place. Well, they were the podium guys. Chris Hartley's gone chasing them. Has he got any fortune? Let's go down to Chris now.
I can tell you that there's some big smiles down here from 2 fellas. One of them a driver, one of them a mechanic.